This month is the annual EP Magazine Guide, Navigating Special Needs Resources. This issue contains articles on newborn screening, dental health, resources for parents who have a child with birth defects, raising more than one child with dyslexia, and more. As always, we have our dedicated military section. Our digital version can be read with universal access features to those with visual impairment, and you can download pages if you want a hard copy of an article. If you have any questions or feedback, please contact us at epmagazinevp@gmail.com.
Suicide is preventable, and each of us has a role to play in suicide prevention.
Suicide is complex. There is no single cause.
And it's not always a mental health issue. It could be loss of a job or home, financial or relationship issues, pain, or leaving the military.
Suicide does not discriminate. It affects all ages, races, and genders, veterans or not.
If you know a veteran who is struggling, connect with them. Let them know help is available.
There is quick and easy access to services in times of crisis.
Dial 988, then press 1. Talking about it is okay.
Don't keep it inside. Don't be ashamed. Don't wait. Reach out.
Find resources at va.gov/reach.
Hello and welcome again to Oscar Mike Radio. My name is Travis. I'm your host. Oscar Mike Radio is part of the Hoobazoo Network. You can find out more on hoobazoo.com. I want to thank my sponsors, Joyce Asek of Asek Real Estate, Army National Guard veteran Mark Holmes of Reaper's Detailing and Power Washing, and my supporters, Cason Shaving Company, Exceptional Parent Magazine, and Black Cat Designs. Look, folks, we're starting off 2024 hot. It's great, and I've had to be Semper Gumby. I've had to be, adjust fire, all that good stuff. And I get this message in my inbox, hey, I'm Dr. Aaron Bryant. I want to check you out. I got this book coming out. I looked at his LinkedIn, folks, and I don't know if we can fit all of Dr. Aaron Bryant in 1 hour. We're going to try, or maybe have him back. But I want to introduce to you author, golfer, podcaster, MBA, doctor, for real. He's like a doctor, all this stuff. Coach, mental wellness professional, Dr. Aaron Bryant, Army veteran, Airborne Ranger. Welcome to Oscar Mike Radio. I mean, that's a mouthful, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this and be on your show. Thanks.
No problem. And this is one of the best aspects of doing Oscar Mike Radio is getting to talk with someone like yourself who, a lot of us veterans reinvent ourselves, a couple times, right? The average American, changes careers 2 to 3 times during their whole career, where we do it 6 or 7 times. But you have this real pattern of reinvention, and then you figured out a way to really write about the mental aspect of wellness and mental health. And you have a new book coming out, which we'll get to. And it's a really interesting story. It's one of the best things about getting to do this show. Before we get into the really good stuff, and it's all good, Doctor, can I give us a background of who you were growing up and then going into the military, please?
Yeah, so I grew up in Compton, California, which is down in LA area. People hear about it on the rap song, so that's where I grew up, born and raised. And had to transition it to Northern Cal, where my parents took us. And from there, Went to the military. Didn't want to do the typical standard thing because my personality and the choices that my brother and I thought about, I wanted something that was a challenge. And so I wanted to be a ranger. Didn't really understand totally what it was, but I knew that it was something that was supposed to be very difficult, very challenging, something that most people cannot even achieve. And so I said, I want to give it a try, and probably bit more than I could chew, but I was there, did it, been there, done it. And I served with my brothers, and that's a whole nother story in the book, probably more so in my first book. Didn't get into it too much in the second book, but that's how I did that. And then came back out, and I was a different person, as you all know. Things were much, much different after that. So I'm sure we can get into that.
In what way? I mean, you go through, it's not just people don't understand that there's the infantry and then things like the Green Berets and the Airborne Rangers, right? But that's a very high, and I'm a Marine, but much respect to the Rangers, right? Rangers lead the way, all that
Exactly.
good stuff. High level of expectations and accountability and standards, extremely high. There's no like, well, you kind of got on target. You either pass or fail. You go from that, right, doctor, back to the civilian world. What was that like?
Yeah, so let me elaborate a little bit. So you have military standards here, and then you have in the Army we have our PT scores, and the perfect score is 300. So Army standards just to stay in a stable, to not get written up, or it's like 240. Well, Rangers we're expected to be at 270, 280 and maintain it. So that's to give you an idea of the physical demand, just the physical demand. So to maintain that throughout, and the challenges and everything that goes with it, all that is kind of happening. So you're right. As you transition back to civilian, you're literally having a certain level of expectation of life, and it's not the same. People are taking life for granted, especially when you're in combat and things you've done, you put your life on the line, your brothers have been, hurt, mangled, or killed, things of these natures. And then you go on the streets, and I recall like people just didn't care. They just took things for granted. They just had this blah nature about them, and it makes you angry. And the thing is, I did not know who I was. I know people started telling me I was different, but I didn't even realize that I had changed. It's me. I live with myself every day. It's like when you gain weight, you don't really notice that you're gaining weight until somebody brings it to your attention, and you realize, oh, you don't really quite look the same. So, oh, you lost weight or you gained weight. So you don't know, and I didn't feel it, but I obviously was. Friends would start falling off, arguments with family members, challenges at work. And I've realized that I've kind of come up with a common denominator that's just the interpersonal relations are just not quite there. And it's not them. It's typically going to fall back on how I am actually acting. I say me because I don't want to blanket all soldiers, but there is this existence of your demeanor and nature of who you are is not quite functioning along the same parallel of most people and as they exist as civilians.
When did you start realizing that you had to change your approach?
I honestly didn't. I'm still going through it. I'm still working through it. And you'll read that in the book, the second book, because I'm still working through that and figuring that out. But that whole coaching thing and everything else came way later. I mean,
Okay.
you got to get past the divorces. You got to get past all that other stuff first. Isolations of people, the termination of jobs or quitting of jobs and all that. But to answer your question, I guess I was lucky enough, and I say I was lucky enough to have a bit of an A-type personality. That's that same personality that got me through Rangers. So the being able to not be a quitter, being able to find something inside you, intestinal fortitude, that type of person that got me to be an excellent soldier is still who I am inside. So that part of not quitting existed. So I was already going to school. I had actually, when I went in the military, I was just shy of my AA degree. So I had to finish that. Oh, I have the GI Bill. So we finished that. And I continued to push myself on the education side. Well, that's something I control. So I'm good with that. So let's keep going. So I'm an intelligent guy. Obviously, I'm a Ranger. I'm doing well. I got my stripes and all that. So I continue. But everything else around me was falling apart, but I can control my education. So the education also contributed to competition, being better. So even though I couldn't maintain stable jobs, like I would go into a job and then I would have issues and I would lose the job. Then as I'm also escalating myself, because thank God, as a military soldier, people love vets. At that time, we started seeing the thank you for your service started evolving. It was like, okay, I can still get a job because somebody saw that I was a veteran. So even though I might have been terminated or I quit, they still would give me another chance. And I took advantage of those chances. But then I started shifting into contracting, which allowed me to maintain a short period of time of employment. So when I'm not existing within the same amount of people who are irritating me too long, that saved me. That is exactly what allowed me to continue to rise in my employment, to get more education, and then start commanding more money. However, as I'm rising professionally, everything else is still crumbling around me. And to kind of get to the point of my divorce, lack of relationship with my kids, I find myself still pursuing education, trying to make myself better, compete in the employment world. Became a professor, a teacher first, and teaching at the colleges, teaching at Phoenix and Bryant, surrounded by other vets. Then that's when things started shifting. I started really enjoying being around fellow vets. I wasn't going to, keep in mind, this is in the time period was in the 2005 period. VA was not really that great. So didn't have a lot of these resources that we have now. Ever since we fired that undersecretary and things like that, we've gotten a lot better. So at that time, you're on your own. So I'm just trying to figure things out. But as I'm teaching and I'm surrounded by fellow vets and their students in my class, and then I'm realizing a vibe and I enjoy it. I feel that they're coming to me as at that time, I wasn't a doctor. I was teaching undergrad as a master's, and they're still coming to me for guidance because at this time, but I'm a professional employer. I'm working, I'm making six figures, and it felt good. And so continuing that transition as I continue my education to eventually become a PhD, then I get to move my status into teaching grad school. My employment started rising. I still felt wonderful being around these vets. And that's when I started picking up things as not only am I helping myself, I'm also can help others. So got into coaching and I started getting into things where I can have resources to help. I didn't want to be a psychiatrist or psychologist or anything like that because I recall at this time, I'm now going to the new VA. I'm now seeing my therapist or my few therapists and how they keep jumping around and quitting. And then I got a new therapist. They do their little 1 to 2 years and they disappear. And I know you guys know the story, but I didn't want to do that. I want to do something a little bit more direct. And so one-on-one and something that was a little more hands-on, a little bit more lifeline, because that's what I needed. I wanted not to be on this whole couch thing and writing prescriptions. That's because that's what VA was feeding us. So the coaching, developmental coaching is what I really started doing, but I did it pro bono. I've been doing it for the last 45 years, just doing it because I wanted to do it, because it was not just helping them, but helping me.
So explain the books to me, because it seems like looking at your books, and I'll have the links to those books in the Oscar Mike Radio show post, is that the books really kind of encapsulate all that, but also show your progression as a care provider in the realm of mental health. How do the books figure into your story, please?
Yeah, so the whole education thing relates to also being a student of myself. Again, when I was going through the divorce, I started this path of trying to understand. One of the things I love about my PhD program is that people don't realize that when you go into PhD, most of it is research, writing and research. And I really captivated that. And I transitioned that to also understanding me. So I've been researching and researching and researching, just trying to understand this mental health thing. This is years ago. The first book, Permission to Heal, was about me capturing my life from beginning to end. Again, trying to understand who I am. Why am I in this situation? I was an intelligent kid. I worked at Wells Fargo as a teller when I was like barely 18. I've had assistant manager jobs, top scores at working at KFC and all these different companies. I've always been the best employee and always got along with people. But why is it that I'm failing in so many different areas at this point in time? And so I wanted to capture what happened, but I had to go back to the beginning. My therapist told me sometimes it's rooted from the beginning. But I wanted to blame the military, but again, who you are as a person, because everybody is different. Not every vet comes out with the same types of challenges. So it was interesting for me to go all the way back. So the first book captures a history, but I wanted to make it interesting. I didn't want to just make it about Dr. Aaron Bryant. So I took the time, my wife, I wanted to capture this story to make it more interesting. So it's a slightly nonfiction fiction where I take two people in the history of the world, two different dynamics, and you follow their path in life. She's from Haiti. I'm from Compton. She's in a hostile environment. I'm in a hostile environment. But she goes through this path where she ends up becoming recruited by a top company. I don't know if I should say their name, but she ends up working with this really top corporate firm. And at this point, she's living this amazing life and doing everything correctly, where I go in the military and everything goes incorrectly, if you look at it in that perception. Again, nonfiction/fiction. But the concept that I took to make it interesting, you still follow this individual who goes in the military and you see his life falling apart. You see him with successes, highs and lows, and you watch his challenges, his mental illnesses, you watch everything that he's going through, and you see how he merges eventually with this woman who has a certain lifestyle that she has, which is strong in religion, strong in culture, because she's from Haiti, she's Catholic, et cetera, and how she merges with this individual who's from Compton, who's, military, PTSD, et cetera, and how she's somehow able to give him some light. So the story, because Permission to Heal is the title, but the subtitle is Violence, Faith, and Family. And that's kind of how this story exists. And that's like I said, it gives it an interesting twist. But the second one, Mental Health, that one is more direct in your face. But at this point in time, because I just finished it, this book now is Dr. Bryant in a new era where now I have a little bit, I never try to claim that I know so much about mental health, because I talk about that in my book. The brain is a very complex organ, so still learning. But the thing with mental health is that now I'm giving an insight on somebody who's actually going through things and how they're managing it. And it's really a toolbox of guidance. And I wrote the book in a way that a 12-year-old and an adult could appreciate it, because I didn't want it to be too complex, because mental challenges, trauma, et cetera, exists even in young adults. So it's a conversational piece. I'm talking to the reader, so that way somebody in their teens, in their early 20s can actually pick it up, read it, pull something out of it, and be able to hopefully utilize it.
What is it about the topic of mental health that instantly puts up, guards, shields, the DMZ, if you will, where we don't want to talk about it, we don't want to admit we have a problem, and it just seems like no matter how we, classify it, society, from the past, present, and even the future, looks at you differently if you sit there and say, I have a mental health problem. Why is that?
Yeah, it's like saying the word suicide. I had somebody told me that, oh, you can't say that word on the air or something like that, and I was like, really? I was like, what happened to freedom of speech? But apparently things are they're taboo. I think mental health kind of falls close to that, where it kind of gives people the impression that there's something wrong with you. And when there's something wrong, people tend to want to, step away from that, because especially the word mental health, it's such a umbrella word that you don't even know what the elements are related to. So people again get fearful because they're not sure what's going to happen. But I applaud so many people today, and you know what? I always believe things happen for a reason. When you started hearing about it the most, we started hearing about it mostly related to the military. Now, again, I'm a spiritual man. I don't go to church every Sunday, but I did. I grew up in the church, and I always believe, and I don't want to go into it in case you have, certain listeners who are not as atheists, but I always believe things happen for a reason. And you have the evolution of us going through as military soldiers, going through this thing where now people are saying, thank you for your service. Well, that courage, the bravery of saying that. Now we're hearing mental health that is a spinoff of that. I think is designed for a reason. I think that we not being looked at differently, because remember, you just said thank you for service. We're strong and we're brave. Now we have a transition of saying, okay, there's something wrong, and it's not so bad because you just said thank you for your service, and now we're saying we have some mental illnesses, we have some challenges. Okay, that's okay, because I just said thank you for your service, so I'm not gonna blackball you too quick. I'm not afraid of you because you just proved who you are. Now we're starting to see another movement where we're seeing athletes are stepping out. We're seeing actors and actresses stepping out. The tennis star Naomi, who won the Wimbledon, and for her to be able to step away and say she's having mental health issues and she needs to step away. Selena Gomez, who's saying it. I applaud them because the bravery is coming out, because it's not so much of a stigma. And then when you hear, which is really difficult and sad, is when we hear about the media saying that a certain actor is committing suicide and they're suffering from mental, or the family will mention it. I applaud them for putting it out there, because that wasn't something they talked about. So we're getting closer to where it's understood, at the point where, remember when the alcoholism and people at DUI, it was, oh, it's something wrong with you. But now we understand it's a disease. Well, we're getting there. Everybody's starting to truly, truly understand. So as a veteran, it's almost like I feel proud that we were able to allow some sort of shift of acceptance, because it spun out of being us who we knew of, even though our grandfathers already had it. They called it shell shock. We had all the terms and the stuff already. It's already been here, but society didn't want to acknowledge it, and they didn't want to do anything about it. So of course, in the United States of America, the way we are, we have to kind of do things a couple of times before we realize it.
You do coaching now and advisement on, health and mental health. Let's just say I'm listening to the show, or I come across your book and I engage you to help me. What's your process when someone comes to you and says, hey, Dr. Bryant, I need help? How do you work through that?
So as I mentioned, I used to do this pro bono all the time, but it got to the point where I had to put it in the formality of a business, because I had to manage my time, and it became difficult to try to keep helping everybody. But to answer your question, and I'm gonna lean on a very specific story of this young lady contacted me out of the blue. And what makes this interesting is I was actually in Mexico, and she was in Mexico. She was up in the Cancun area. I was down in Puerto Vallarta. So I think that's how we found each other somehow. She heard I was the commander for the American Legion down in Puerto Vallarta. So she reached out to me. And it really just starts off with a conversation. It, let the common denominator of being veterans makes it a lot easier. So we have that conversation, just like when you and I first, got on this Zoom, we just started talking. That is always the easiest and the best way, because I want to get to know you. It's not about, how many hours we're going to do, how long we're going to have this session, what package you're going to choose. I could care less about that. My first and foremost is why I choose to do this. Now, I want to clarify, I'm a developmental coach, which goes a little deeper than like a life coach. People typically hire life coaches, like, for instance, if you want to do an interview for a job or you're trying to get a promotion, you have some specific you're trying to achieve. I kind of go with the person themselves, and I want to help them develop. So I go a little deeper, and we kind of, take care of a bigger picture, because my goal is to get you to launch and be independent. Even though on my website, it kind of categorizes things, it really isn't. I do that because it just gives some people just feel they need to look at certain things in their life. But truth of the matter is, at the end of the day, we're going to tackle the big picture. And that starts off with a conversation. And then we kind of, as we're communicating, you start picking up key words. You start picking up certain things that bothers the person, their expressions, their actions, the things they may say about somebody, things they may say about them. And I obviously have the background and training to understand these things. And the unique thing about it is I've been there. This is why I do it, because I have been there. I don't, like you told me, everybody in the beginning, you looked at my bio and my portfolio, I've kind of been everywhere. I work for Fortune 500s, Fortune 25s. I consulted with Fortune 25s, public sector, politics. I mean, trust me, you talked about bringing me back. I could go on and on. I got secrets about politicians. Even somebody who's currently in office really high up, because that person started in California and I was in that arena. So there's like all these things that I've been around and seen, witnessed, been a part of as post-military. So having to manage these emotions and everything, I've seen it, been there. So adding the layer of education, training, and as anybody knows, coaches, psychiatrists, psychologists, etc., you have to go through real life, process of learning. It's not just books. So yeah, it's I take it very, very seriously when on every call, every confidential, one-on-one, and it's not a matter of how long, it's when you're ready.
One of the things that a lot of, us, myself included, think, when you talk to somebody in counseling is, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
I mean, this person has no idea who I really am. And, they seem to have more education, more this, more that. How are they possibly going to relate to me? And is it what you said, that you have all these various experiences that allow you to connect with that person in a real and authentic way?
Absolutely. You nailed it on the head, because that's exactly what I say when I go to these sessions. When I'm in there, when I go to my counselor, my therapist there, and let me clarify, I never call myself a therapist. I never call myself, we're not counseling, I'm not trying to pick on words, but I just, because that's a psychiatrist, that's the psychologist. And those are people that we as vets, VA expects us to go see them. I just saw one not too long ago, since I transitioned here to my new city, and I had to go check in and see this person. And I'm sitting there going, you don't know me. You probably put me up on the VA computer and looked at my notes and my history, and we're going to sit here talking like, nah. And that's exactly it. But I do try to reveal my past. I'm very transparent, hence the book. Again, my first book, my second book, it's so, especially the second book, so transparent. It's me as an open book. My podcast, when you listen to my story, you hear me on those YouTube and all those, my podcast, I say everything. I don't hold back. So going back to, you talked about how people are afraid to say mental health and all that. I got over that a long time ago. I got tired of trying to hide and protect. It just wasn't healthy. the more I felt that I just had to be honest, the better I felt, in a way that it allowed me to say, I know I have my shortcomings, so I'm letting you know. And then therefore it allowed me to show the vulnerability, because I shouldn't be asking anybody else to do that if I can't do it myself. I was part of a motorcycle club, Buffalo Soldiers. And the thing is, it's a very family oriented organization. Love them. We ride everywhere. We give back to the community. And there was a time where when I was having some challenges, as you know, we go up and down, we have our days, and I just felt like I need to let them know. Like, I need to let you know. So I sent an email. I was a secretary of the chapter at the time, and I sent this pretty lengthy email to the entire chapter, and I had to let them know what is happening with me and what's going on, because I think there was moments of my actions that they saw based on things that took place, and it was not fair to them to not understand. So this is some of the things that I try to communicate. I get it. I understand. It doesn't matter about race. It doesn't matter about gender. Doesn't matter about age. Doesn't matter about military era. Trust me, there's not much you can say that I probably won't either relate to, understand, or I have assisted somebody else. Going back to Mexico, the person that called me in Mexico, this was a white female alcoholic drug addict veteran. So you're talking about checking boxes. And probably one of my most challenging circumstances that I had to deal with. And she was in Mexico, so she was isolated from family. You couldn't leverage that. Isolated from medical resources, because she's in Cancun. There's no VA hospitals or anything. And one of the things we talked about it, because your listeners are probably aware of this, is that when you have your sessions with VA, you're supposed to be in country. You're not allowed to do that outside of country, because that resource, that therapist, has to be able to call 911 or get somebody to you if necessary. So this person was, I don't know if she was doing that out of country, but this is where she was living. So she's definitely not getting her resources and not getting any type of help, which is, again, probably why she called me. So very delicate situation. And I'm proud to say she's doing so. Oh, and I'm sorry, we had a fifth component, relationship. She had a boyfriend that was that I could tell was probably not necessarily abusive, but definitely mentally abusive, but not so much on the physical side. She was a veteran, so I think she could stand up for herself. But the mental abuse was definitely there, taking advantage of her, things like that. So yeah, pretty complex, but happy to say she's doing much better. She's back in the States, able to help her transition back to the States, be with her family, living with her mother, doing so much better, attending sessions away from me now. Now she's doing sessions within VA, which is fine. As long as I check on her regularly, and I feel like she's doing much, much better. But in the beginning, I tell you, you get those calls where it's challenging, and I'm proud to say that my history of life has come to the point where I feel like I have enough tools to help people. As I tell my kids, I went through a lot, so I can share with you what you need to do to be better and successful, better than I was.
You talk about certain groups like the American Legion. You're very upfront that you are heavily involved in the American Legion. You talk about the Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club. How key were being with these groups and being around other veterans to helping you being able to relate to people as a whole? Because you got around veterans and people who kind of knew you and you knew them. You were able to foster relationships and kind of understand people again, and then go out there and help people. And the reason I'm asking that is a lot of veterans kind of shy away from the American Legion, the VFW. It's still kind of a stigma in certain areas to be a part of like a motorcycle club in any capacity. But it seems like, looking at your story, organizations like these and other things that you have done were really kind of the foundation for you to be able to do this work now.
That's a great question. So let me answer that this way. First of all, for those who are listening and probably trying to choose a particular organization, I want to say very clearly, make sure the organization fits you. Make sure you spend time, like in a motorcycle club, there's this process where you're a prospect. Even before prospecting, there's a process where you call a hang around. Do that time of just getting to know the organization before you join it. Don't join it just because it says they're a veteran organization. So you say, oh, I'm a vet, I'm going to join. Spend the time, because the elements of every one of those organizations is a little different. I learned that. So to answer your question, the Buffalo Soldiers, even though the name was related, goes back to the Black Cavalry soldiers who helped with this entire evolution of our country, it's not really a military organization. It's just the name. The founder is actually a police officer out of Chicago, but he had such a passion for the Black Cavalry soldiers, he chose to name it that. So not to say that we don't have a lot of vets, because we absolutely do have a lot of vets. But I probably, in my particular chapter, I think I was, out of like maybe I think 30 something members, I think 9 of us were veterans. So again, knowing where you go. Now, yes, I'm the current commander of the American Legion, and down in Puerto Vallarta, and that obviously is a military organization. And I find myself surrounded by my Vietnam vets. I am probably one of the youngest. So again, figuring out what you're getting involved with. And the Vietnam vets, obviously 60 plus, you find that they are disconnected. You find that they don't even know about the resources anymore. Now, keep in mind, I just said I'm from. This is a post in Puerto Vallarta, so they've already left the States. So they have no clue of what's going on with the new changes at VA. What's new with how we can get resources. They've probably been living in Puerto Vallarta for 20 years plus, because they got tired, they got fed up. We don't have to, that's a whole nother show where we can talk about, how a lot of our older vets have, been angry with the society and how they become Hell's Angels and all this stuff. But yeah, these guys have bounced, they left. So they're like sick of it. So having them in my post and being able to, that's more or less me being the one that's trying to father them and helping them figure out, hey guys, you're eligible for this, you're eligible for that. So that's actually humbling. So to answer your question, very humbling, and it goes back to my passion of helping. So that's hat there is much different than my hat at Buffalo Soldiers. Now, VFW, again, I hear that it's going through a transition where there's becoming more younger vets are getting involved more so than I remember when they first asked me, and I'm like, I looked around and all these guys were 70 plus, and I was like, I don't think so. So again, knowing where you're at and who you're getting associated with, but it definitely does help me get grounded. I maintain a level of passion. I don't have to put on the whole, the coaching hat, because these guys been there, done that. They've seen things much more and deeper than I have. So, but I am the one that gives them the up-to-date guidance. I am the one that kind of looks out for them. I'm like the young grandson, because they're isolated from their family. So I'm kind of like, hey, you know what, let me make sure you get to your doctor's appointment and that kind of thing. Making sure they get resources, because it is a challenge between the two countries. But it's a different hat, different situation, and I play each one in its own silo.
Well, the thing I'm hearing, if listening to you, is there's this aspect of being a part of this organization, but also helping people and helping others. Is there a powerful component into helping others to help yourself?
Yes, I probably should have touched on that earlier, but absolutely. The thing when I was going through my divorce, I realized as I'm learning and understanding why I was getting a divorce, I was starting to learn about myself. When you go to the divorce counselor, And then you go to your own counselor, because I started going to my own interpersonal class, separate from my counseling sessions. And this is outside VA, by the way. I was doing my own thing. And I started realizing in my interpersonal class how I wasn't able to get along with people. Again, tie that back to all those jobs and all that. I just could not function around people. So I'm starting to really go, wow, what is going on here? And I just couldn't, because like I'll never forget the first day of that interpersonal class. I go there and I'm doing whatever I can because I'm trying to save my marriage. So I'm telling my at the time my wife, I'm going to go to this. I'm going to go to this class. So, and even though I did not want to go, I sit in this class, this course or interpersonal thing, and then you got these people who don't know me, who have nothing to do with me, not military. It was non-military. This is just civilians, and I'm hating it. But I learned that there was definitely something with me, and I learned some things. So that was the start. And then by more I got involved with others, more I got involved with veterans, more I started seeing, more I started doing, I started learning. So every time I do research, every time I'm helping somebody, every time I'm communicating, every time I do a podcast, the things I say, it's because I either already researched it, been through it, or it's helping me. I'm conversing what I'm actually doing for myself. I never talk about anything or say anything I don't do the homework on or hasn't benefited me in some way. So everything that I am delivering is because I already brought it to myself. So again, going way back to the beginning of your show, I'm still in transition. I'm still going through it. And the mental health book, circling back to my book, that is giving you a perspective of that. I'm walking you through my path of what's happening and how I'm managing day to day, and then yet still trying to figure out my next step.
As I'm sitting here, I'm going back to the Marine Corps, thinking of a saying that says, maybe the Army has it too, know yourself and seek self-improvement.
No, we don't have that, but I like it.
Well, yeah, it's something that our NCOs drilled into us, right? And now it makes sense, right? There's never time off if you're doing it right, to understand that there's always something to improve, and you got to know yourself to do that. So I thought that was very interesting how, yeah, you have all these education, all the accolades and the experience behind it, but you're still learning about yourself, Doctor. That's very interesting.
Absolutely. Every day. And I hope that doesn't deter somebody from seeking help and wanting to call me, because it's, as I mentioned, the brain is a very complex thing and no person can be an expert in this. And when you talk about mental health, the elements, there's so many. And when you combine that with the brain, I mean, come on, it's an ongoing learning thing. And that's why I'm continuously doing that. I constantly continue to try to educate myself, read. Again, being a student of this is amazing because I learned something. And the more people I work with, more people I'm involved with, the more I pick up and learn. So combining that with education in real life, it just gives me more tools. And the more tools I have, the more I can create.
You have your first book and your second book. The second book, folks, is Mental Health. I'll have the link to it in the Oscar Mike Radio show post. You mentioned you're thinking about a third book.
Fourth, actually. I actually have, to be honest, I already have the next two books in draft. And I have another one, an idea concept. So it just keeps coming. It's amazing. It keeps coming. But I will tell you this. I don't want people to feel like, oh, he's just writing. It's actually very difficult for me to write it. This mental health book, I had the notes of this 2 years ago. But my mental challenges made it difficult for me to kind of get it out and write it down. The transparency, taking me back to certain time. It was hard. It was hard and it was really difficult. My first book was so much easier and it's much more thicker, bigger. I don't remember how many pages. It's like, look at it here. Almost 200 pages, my first one. And I knocked that out, not because a lot of it is, like I said, biography is history. So I put a lot of history and a lot of information and knowledge in it. So it wasn't as challenging. This one is like half, and it was really difficult. So I can just jot down the notes. I can have the concept and the ideas, create my outline. But when it gets to putting the crossing the T's and dotting the I's, it becomes challenging when you start to really having to be honest and reflective, transparent. So moving forward, I can't say when it's coming out. I don't want to put a date because this date for mental health kept changing, but it's there. It's just a matter of me being me and being a a broken soldier, having to be able to get this going. But again, and I say this in my book, that gives me the reason to get out of bed. That gives me the reason to continue pushing forward, because I feel like if I could get this on paper, I'm gonna help somebody. And this again is why I do what I do, because if I have the client, if I have a patient, if I have somebody who's relying on me and waiting on me, then I can get out of bed, because I do not want people to think, oh, he's got it all taken care of. I can honestly tell you that is not true.
You have the books, but what's next? Do you have any other goal besides, not just besides, but do you have any other goal outside the books that you're going for with your career, with your outreach, personally? What's next for you, doctor?
I almost had to think about that, because the book was so, the last few months, just finalizing it kind of kept me pretty
Sure.
much engaged. But I actually, yes, there is something that's happening. So going back to my MD, I am actually a part of a company where we are a healthcare consulting firm, and we collaborate with bigger other healthcare medical facilities to help them improve their efficiency. My background, bringing that back into play with some partners of mine, we are working with other companies to help them with their healthcare. Healthcare is kind of, again, going back to my background, has in the last since I hate to put politics in it, but unfortunately it's the timeline. So the Obamacare period, et cetera, a lot of our medical resources and options has shifted. I'm just going to say shifted. And so there's a demand for improving that. So partners and I and another 13 other professional advisors have gotten together, and we're working on improving that as a consulting firm. And that's been keeping me pretty engaged. In fact, I'm flying to Florida here in a couple of weeks to speak at something. It's on my website. And then I go back to Mexico to see my soldiers, see my American Legion guys. So I got to go check in on them.
All right, kind of wind this down. A couple questions, kind of light ones here. Do you ride a motorcycle still?
I do. I have a CVO Road Glide. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, really? You like the CVO?
I do. I like the warm seats and the grips.
I ride a Yamaha Stratoliner, and it's getting old. I'm looking at new stuff, and I'm trying to decide between Harley or Indian. We'll see what happens there.
Well, it depends on your budget. If you don't want to have something that you have to take in all the time, everybody say stay away from the Harley. But unfortunately, ever since I saw the history of Harley Davidson on, I don't know, some history channel or whatever, I just felt that there's a certain love for the Harley Davidson. So I just kind of stick with that for that
Nice.
reason.
And you're into martial arts too. Do you have a favorite? What do you think about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Is it really the supreme king daddy of all martial arts?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna say no because I've beaten quite a few. I have a black belt in Chinese Kempo and a black belt in Japanese Kempo. Saikosa Shorikai, which is my Japanese Kempo, comes from the Maitosi family clan out of Japan, and James Maitosi, who passed away in Hawaii, I've trained under two of his students. And my Chinese Kempo, I have some history there. That was with Black Karate Federation, was shifted into the IKKA, International Kempo Karate Association. Our legacy is like my instructor, Clarence McGee Jr., who was in the first Karate Kid movie. My the senior sensei. He was the tall. He trained Wesley Snipes and things like that. So I come from a Kempo background. So I fought all types of different arts, and I have to say that I'm a passion with my Japanese Kempo because I learned Aikido, I learned Shotokan with Japanese, how to write Japanese, I learned rotation. It really took my Kempo to another level. So Jiu-Jitsu is an amazing art, but you won't get me on the ground, so it won't really be any use. I always
That's my whole problem with it. It's like I'm like, wait a minute, guys. The whole point's not to get on the ground.
Exactly right. Well, it's like, John. Everybody says like Jean-Claude Van Damme. I hope I hope he listens. It'd be great if he's one of your listeners. But I'll be the first to tell him. I'm like, look, why are you jumping in the air? Because if you jump in the air to try to kick me, trust me, you're not going to get me because I won't be standing in that same spot while you're jumping and doing this 360 kick. I won't be in the same spot.
It's just funny. It's really funny how that's something else. Golf. Now, I'm not a golfer, but I know a lot of vets who are. What's your favorite part of golfing?
Yeah, so and I need to put this on my website. I've actually been a advocate for golf, for mental health for a long time, way before the PGA Hope started. So just to let everybody know, PGA Hope is affiliated with the PGA, and it allows for veteran golfers to get involved. You learn how to play golf. They teach you from beginning to just learning how to hold the club. Amazing program. Depending on what region you're in, you get to actually play on real courses at a discounted rate. I miss Northern California, where I'm from, because they had an amazing PGA program. We played golf once a month easy at all the courses for like $30. Courses that normally would cost $80, $90. We got to play Pebble. We would play the affiliated course of Pebble, all because we're PGA Hope graduates. So absolutely love this, swear by it. But golf is definitely a sport if your body can manage it. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I have to get a massage twice a week. And not to mention, I soak in my tub for about an hour and a half after I play because my body can't. I should not be playing golf, but I love it so much. And I know if VA probably listening and they're probably going to go check my file. Hey, I'm telling you now, my disclaimer. I shouldn't be playing. I just do it because of the mental side. My physical's broken, but my back, my knees, my feet, I can't walk for 3 days after. But when I'm out there for the 4.5 hours, I get to be in peace, especially if I'm playing by myself, which is why I live on a golf course now, so I can just go out anytime. I don't have to play with 2, 3 other knuckleheads, and I could just be alone, and it's between me and that course. And the challenge, the fortitude, the ability to not beat it, because you'll never beat it, but you go out there and do it again, it has something to do with that mentalness in your head, because as soldiers, as veterans, we're not quitters. So we want to keep trying. And yet the challenge of it is pretty amazing. And I swear by it. I think golf is amazing. You just have to get by the frustration, because it's a sport that you'll never win. It sucks. And you'll have a good day and you'll shoot a good score, and then the next day you can't even hit it off the tee. But if you can get past that, knowing you're not going, well, I don't want to say that. I would hope somebody can get to the PGA, but likely the odds are not there because most of the PGA guys started when they're kids. But the fact that it's such a competitive and challenging sport, it truly has something to do with that. So I actually been interviewed a few times about that, and I've been swearing by it since the beginning, but it just hurts. It hurts. It hurts in the body. The mental part gets a little bit of stimulation, but the body breaks down every time.
So closing this out, folks, I'm with Dr. Aaron Bryant, Army Ranger, veteran, a plethora, a cornucopia of experience, both, academically and in, the workforce and things he's done. Author. The book is Mental Health. I'll have the link in the Oscar Mike Radio show post. Doctor, how can people connect with you about your book, about what you do, or if they want to see about, partaking of your services?
Yeah, real easy. My website is my name, Dr. Aaron P. Add the P, Papa Bryant.com. No dots, just straight across.com. Dr. Aaron P. Bryant.com, and you'll be able to reach me. It's really simple. Oh, and all my social media is the same too.
We'll have those links in the Oscar Mike Radio show post. Look, folks, this is why I do Oscar Mike Radio, is to talk to people like this, just like you and me, who have, gotten out of the military and rebuilt their lives or rebooted their lives several times. And Doctor, it's been a pleasure having you on. Hope to come back on when you write more or have something to talk about. Just hit me up and we'll make this happen.
Hey, pleasure, and thank you for doing what you're doing as well. Appreciate it.
Well, as we say in Oscar Mike Radio, we are mission flight. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Remember, Anna teaches our mission. We care about it and we do it every day. But I think there are things that just hit you and give you a reason to go on. The theme for our 2024 from Roots Across America is Live with Purpose. It just seemed to fit in with the vows of the REAP, the 10 attributes that we feel represent our United States military. I thought, what a great opportunity to put those two things together and show our kids through how we act some of the things that can make their lives better, their communities better, and by doing that, the country better. For me, Live with Purpose, I think, it's a mindset. Set some guidelines and then go out and purposefully make life different, make a change. It's an opportunity to set an example.
Thank you for listening and watching Oscar Mike Radio, where our active duty service members and veterans are in action and the mission is in flight. Oscar Mike Radio is an oversized load Co-Sinister One production. If you are a veteran or know a veteran who needs help, please dial 988 and press 1 for the Veterans Crisis Line.